Hi everyone, welcome back to another SimplePlanes video. In this video, I'll be going over some of the progress updates for this week, and we're working on making the eyeless approach button work on the SWL10. So let's get started. The main building progress updates this week are for the SWL120. The plan has been split up into several different files in order to facilitate easier building, due to the limits of my computer, and so smaller things can be worked on at a larger scale, or just so I'm not always navigating to that one section of the plane. There is, of course, the main file, and I'm probably going to rename this to the SWL120, not new. And it looks mostly complete. This is nudged down a bit. But from the outside, aside from a missing livery, it's mostly complete, or it looks like that. On the inside, there's no interior. This fuselage is actually the old style, which is not that part efficient, and the cockpit has absolutely no interior. And I believe I have redesigned the size of these windows a bit. We have the SWL120 wings, and these are the new wings, and these do have some seats in them. My FPS is dropping a bit, but I'm not going to work on this until I have my new computer. And it's because I'm not really working on this part yet, because I need the cockpit so I can control everything else now. So we have the seats and the new style fuselage, which has been integrated into the rest of the wings. And there was no landing gear, there's just the doors. Like there's no landing gear here. And we have the SWL120 nose, which has again the new fuselage type and seats. And while there is a small cockpit interior here, this is just like a placeholder. I've actually started yet another file to work on the cockpit interior. That's this file. And we have the landing gear, with nothing here. And we have the SWL120 engines. Well, I'm going to redesign the engines to be more part efficient, because this is not part efficient at all. And to incorporate some of the new variables, like for how you start the engines. And that means I have to work on the cockpit interior first, and then I can work on everything else. In the cockpit interior, I have worked on the radios, nav1, nav2, com1 and com2. And it's on the same basic principle of the SWL10, except this time there are 2 inputs for each radio. You could technically say there are 4 navs and 4 comms, however I like to think of it as 2 options for each one. I was trying to have it like a real plane where you have a standby and active frequency, and you can only change the standby frequency, and then you can just swap that with the active. However, I was experiencing difficulties doing this, so instead of wasting 2 days just coding a small feature, I decided to just have 2 inputs. You'll also notice that instead of having big buttons, I have dials and then small buttons. Normally I just have the dials, however, due to the lack of a movable knob, like a dial knob, I've had to use small buttons to act like tooltips, except they're the buttons, and then the dial is connected to a rotator that's on the output variable. Just like the SWL10, these have hemispheres for rivet heads, and there are duplicates for the first officer and the captain, and then there's the engine throttles. I'm going to show you how this works in-game. I've detailed these a lot. They have some small rivets here. We have not too many parts, but 5 parts per handle. We have reverse thrust. This is based off the Boeing 787, just like this whole cockpit and most of the noses. I just needed someone to look in a real-life plane for inspiration, and I chose the Boeing 787 because it's pretty similar to the type of plane I'm trying to make. This is the overhead panel, and it's currently in what I call building mode. Like just playing mode is where it normally is. Building mode is where it's flat out, like just laid flat out, rotated upside down, where I can easily add stuff to it without having to rotate it and nudge it in place. Note that none of this really works. These technically do work, but none of this works. I'm making all the details so I can write the code for it later. And this is part of the engine start system that I need to finish before I can work on the engines. And you have off, on, and then start. And the idea is to have tooltips buttons, similar to the radios, and then you can turn this, so it goes from off to on, and then you click it again, it goes to start, and when the engine RPM reaches a set value, It releases from start, goes to the on position. Then you can add the fuel and no start. And then this is going to be cabin light things, and I haven't added switches yet. And there's going to be many more, like hydraulics, buttons, like there's lots. I just haven't got around to adding it yet. And you'll notice that, especially at night time, all of this glows. I wanted to have it so you can turn the backlit feature on or off. However, there's no easy way to do that. I guess you could have some labels that are permanently on, and then some permanently off ones, but I didn't want to have a high part count, so I just left it as is. And I'm just going to change some of the radio values. The increase by 5 and increase by 0.5 and the decrease ones are similar to the SWL10. There's just a main dial and then the tooltip buttons. And every single button has its own tooltip. And then you just click the reset switches to reset it. And these lights indicate which of these is final selection for the radio. Currently they're all set to the option 1, and then there's option 2. And the throttles. There's also a speed brake lever, which is activated via launch countermeasures, so it has its own input. And then the flaps, which is, of course, on VTOL. These are in increments. I'm not sure how many it is. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you have the 2 on-off switches. These are the fuel, run, and cutoff. Again, modeled off the Boeing 787. These also control what throttles are actually moving. So if the left one is off, only the right throttle can move. Same with the reverse thrust lever. And the reverse thrust is on fire guns. And that is it for all the SWL 120 progress updates. In the SWL 10, I don't think I've done anything since the last video, so let's just get straight into working on the approach. I think I have added this button. No, I did that in the last episode. Anyway, so when this button activates, what should happen is the autopilot should take in the ILS values and then use that as just part of the system. So what we need to do is look at our ILS code and then look at the autopilot code. While we're in here, I'm also going to show you the variables for the SWL 120. And these are all for the radios. There's a lot of them. So the SWL10's ILS code is somewhere over here. Here it is. And there's 2 different codes. So we're not going to change this. We're going to change the autopilot code. The altitude code is going to work off the glide slope. And then the heading autopilot is going to work off the localizer code. And these are going to be added. And in fact, this is actually going to be part of the distance from target heading. So we're going to add the localizer code here, and I'm going to make that be times by the autopilot approach. So I go back in here and see what variable this outputs to. Autopilot approach mode input, okay. So we're going to have that. The reason I'm having greater than 0 than putting a clamper 1 around it is to ensure I generate a boolean, and then the clamper 1 makes it either 0 or 1. And actually I just realized that I need to have something that when this is activated, deactivate the autopilot heading value. So when it equals 0, then we can then that outputs 1, and then we can use that to have the autopilot heading value run. And then I'm just gonna put more brackets around all of this. We have that initial one, and then we have another one. And this is the one that is greater than 0. And then that's actually gonna be another set of brackets. And then that times the localizer code. And then I add another bracket, and then that is the heading code. I think it's done. If it works incorrectly or it's really off, we can come back here again. And we're going to apply the same idea to the altitude code. Some other plans I have for the autopilot code is to have some more things that go up or down based on what speed you're at, and then that's how much trim the autopilot should apply. Okay, I have no idea how this is going to work in practice, but I'll just make a test run. And I'll make a backup of the SWL10's file in case this goes horribly wrong. Step 1. Start everything. Step 2. Tune in the ILS frequencies for right airport. Right, so I chose, now if 1 is the input, the ILS needles, they weren't maxed out because we're like right on the threshold. But if we go to something like, I don't know, the cockpit, if I went to somewhere like final approach default location, they should be functioning as intended. So I'll just see what happens when I click the approach mode. Nothing happened. Awesome. I just realized I need to activate. There we go. Right. Let's see what happens. This is not working at all. I'll just try it again. It's doing something, but I'm not sure what. So what I'll do is I'll see how the values respond when I have a standard autopilot working, like at altitude 2000 at heading 50. Then I'll compare them to the ILS outputs. I think the issue is actually in my activation code. So what I'll do is I'll just go into here and figure it out. The weird thing I'm finding about this issue is the elevators are doing something, but I'm not sure what. The problem though is that the distance from target altitude is actually 0, which means that's the problem. What happens if I copy all of this code and debug that expression? Syntax error. Okay, why is that? Okay, I figured out the issue. This looks like the code for an original clamp input, but I'm not sure what happened to that clamp input. It's probably in the SimplePlanes backup file. Good thing I made that. So it's maxed out, and I think I got it working, and I'm not sure. So never mind, this is broken, but I'll just deactivate that. Pitch down. It goes from that. Alright, so I believe I have it working now. No, I don't. Actually, I think it is working. So as we get the glide slope, it doesn't work. So the weird thing is this is at 0 just as I hit the water. And the reason the autopilot tries to climb to nothing and just level the plane out is because, am I gonna make this? Nope. Alright, so the reason the plane just tries to level out is because the autopilot altitude code works off first the distance from target altitude, but then that's used as part of a vertical speed code, which means that this is 0, which means the plane is trying to have 0 vertical speed, which means that it tries to level itself out, pretty much. So it's trying to level itself out to get 0 vertical speed. It does this at any altitude. I still don't know what the issue is here, so let's just debug the expression of the autopilot approach mode input. Currently it's 1. Right now it's 0. Okay. What I'll do now is I'll just test certain parts of this. So if this part works, okay, then it's 0. And then what about the other part? So I remove all this and just have the other bit. This is where it gets complicated. So right now it's always 0, if I deactivate that. It's currently maxed out. I may have found the issue. So what I'll do is I'll do this. What we need to do is, instead of having everything in this weird system, what I need to do is have this as its own separate input, which I'll grab from the backup code. So I'll grab the original distance from target altitude code, which is pretty short. Then I'll have that code here. And then I'll have, in these brackets, the ILS code. And then of course I'll just have a quick activator that deactivates this bit when the other code is active. So autopilot. So this code, if I go to here, currently it should be active, but it's not. I know what I need to do. Need to actually activate that clamp boolean. So if this equals 0, then activate. If this equals 0, then output 1, and then output 0. So right now, yep, that seems about right, because we are above the target altitude. As we get close, yep, there we go. And then when we activate the approach mode, that's off. And then what we need to do is then have our original approach mode that we were trying to work with. It's this big mess here. It actually isn't that bad. And there's an empty stack. That should be easy. There we go. Okay, let's see how this works. Let's just get far away from the runway again. So I'm just going to climb There we go. That looks pretty good. Only problem is instead of 91.44, this outputs 1. So now what we need to do is just times it by 91.44. It should be easy. That was very easy. And then when we fly past the threshold, this will go to 0, then we have a normal. So this code is now working. I'm going to copy this and paste in here. Now to work on the heading code. I'll just look at the heading variable to see if that is working fine. No, it is not working fine. Now let's have a look at how it works. Let's have a look at the original code to see what we changed. The reason this is so long is because I was trying to fix some heading loop thing. I'll just test the original one. So you know why it's not working? It's because these are not how you meant to do it. Yeah. So we need to take our final code, this bit, and manually add it to the plane. Never mind, it somehow changes it, but I'll just put my new working code in. Syntax error. What? I have a hunch about that. Let's have a look at the other one. Yeah, it's the heading code, so what does it mean by syntax error? Yeah, whatever, I'll just load the backup and put it in there. So let's test this one with only the altitude modified. So I'll just put 109.5 on this frequency and activate it. It looks like it is working. We just need to control a heading by ourselves. It does not seem to be working. The plane's trying to climb? What? So the original altitude without the approach is working. It levels out at approximately 500 feet. But the approach one is not. And never mind, it is. So right now we're descending and we're above the glide slope. And it's trying to climb. Then when we go to the glide slope, it's really weird. I do not understand this. So I found the issue. It's that the aircraft is trying to descend and climb at a maximum of 1,000 feet per minute. However, the glide slope we've chosen, 10 degrees, is way too much. And at 1,000 feet per minute, and at 1,000 feet per minute, the plane simply just cannot descend. So I have to have an insanely high descent rate just to meet this glide slope. And you can see here that I've changed it to 5,000. We're still not really meeting it. So that was a hard landing. So yeah, so 10 degrees is too much. Oh no, I'm gonna stall a minute, aren't I? Okay, my plane's being weird. Wait, oh right, the autopilot's still on. Well, this is mainly a testbed plane, so I'm not gonna fix this issue in this plane because I really don't wanna. So the issue is actually a glide slope issue. But I'm just gonna say it works because my autopilot's a little buggy. There's a few bugs I'm just not gonna fix. But I think the autopilot works great. It's the ILS code that's at fault here. The glide slope's too big. That was an issue that I should have found way back in development. I'm not sure I got 10 degrees though, because it's apparently 3 degrees in real life. And let's see how this goes. Step 1, actually go back to the approach. And I'll just set myself up as a random area. I'll just set the vertical speed to like, I don't know. I'll set the vertical speed something like 5,000. So already it is being weird again. Why is it leveling out? So why is it 0? This is being weird again, I don't know why. The issue is definitely in this bit because this is the bit where it's being weird. Wait a minute. Why is that? Oh, I found the issue. That's not the right variable. That should be glide slope code. And then I'm just going to reload the plane, load the level, start everything up, and then see what happens. It's being weird again. Okay, I'm just going to get out here again. Yeah, I found the issue. It's because I referenced incorrect variables again. The distance from target heading code should use the localizer code times localizer code. We can test this again. So it appears to slowly keep tuning the plane. Alright, it's another case of just inverted stuff again. So we just do invert localizer code Another thing is I moved all the heading stuff to a different variable because I wanted to separate just all the heading mess and the actual code that we keep changing. I didn't really get a good chance to test that, so I'm going to do it again. So we climb at a really insane climb rate to our target altitude, and then we reach that. And what happens if the heading is all weird? Like over here somewhere. So let's try to change it. So it tries to change it, then it tries to turn us back, and it's come on, turn. Well, I guess it has a few bugs. This is not gonna end well, but I have everything I need to know. The approach mode is a bit buggy and needs some edits. However, I'm not going to make them because someone else developed a different system that's similar to mine, but has the same principle of the ILS system, except the glide slope is 3 degrees instead of 10, and the localizer, instead of being 10 degrees either way, is instead, I think, 2 or 3 degrees. That will mean that it's much more sensitive, and that the plane doesn't slowly start trying to keep back on course. But we have a proof of concept here, and I think that's all that really matters, that we had the idea. And I think the SWL-10 is almost finished. There isn't that much that needs to be done. There's probably just the interior. I think I might leave that. I will add a few small things, but I think this cockpit is just about complete. I do need a co-pilot checklist though, but and it's only 970 parts. It'll probably be just over 1,000 when I finish. I also need reset switches for the heading, altitude, and vertical speed values. Also, while I remember, I'll add some repeats to the vertical speed. So instead of looping at 99,900 feet, it will instead do that at, I think 10,000 feet is a good value, so I'll do 10,000. Where is it? Here it is. So yeah, instead of that, I'll just do 10,000. I also need a greater adjustment for the heading and the altitude, but I don't really want to redo them now, since they're already developed as is. And I'm already working on this in the SWL 120 with all the dials and knobs on the radios here. And I'll just copy the same code up to the autopilot panel. And now that we've finished with the SWL-10's code, we can delete the backup file. So I think that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!